May 18th at 7 p.m.
This conference will now be recorded.
We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Maskey.
Here.
Schwantes.
Here.
Davis. Here. Alvarado.
Here.
Osmus.
Here.
Bauman.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
And present, 0 absent.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Fagerly will be reciting the pledge. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Fagerly. Next, are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? Seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Osmus.
Councilmember Maskey, followed by Osmus. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Bauman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Next, we'll have the consent items. Ms. Thompson.
On tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the city council minutes of May 4th, the Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of May 11th, Planning Commission minutes of May 6th, the accounts payable report for April 30th through May 13th, and for council's acceptance, the building report for the month of April, and Central Community Transit Board minutes of March 24th.
Move to approve.
Osmus, second.
Motion by Maskey, seconded by Osmus to approve the consent items. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Bauman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Next, we'll open the public hearing. The public can call in at 320-335-7135. The entire 10 digits must be dialed, including the area code. With that, I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director, Mr. Sean Christensen, and I'll open the public hearing at this time. Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. In front of you tonight, as typical on an annual basis, is the public hearing for the assessment to adopt the assessment roll, and in tonight's particular case, accept the bid and award 3 different projects, or 3 separate projects rather. So required by Minnesota State Statute 429.031, Subdivision 1B, an assessment hearing is being held for the 2020 street and other improvements. This public hearing on the proposed street and other improvements has been called for the purpose of reviewing and explaining the proposed assessments to obtain input from interested parties. The recommended actions tonight, Mr. Mayor, are to adopt the assessment roll for the 2020 improvement projects, and then, as mentioned, 3 different projects to accept the bid and award a project and authorize signatures on the contract. So I would ask you, Mr. Mayor, if you want me to go ahead and go through the PowerPoint quick and then turn it back to you, and how would you like to do this?
If you would, please.
Okay, then I'm going to share my screen and get to the PowerPoint. And hopefully everybody can see that. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public, tonight is the 2020 street. Is that jumping for everybody else? Or just me?
Sean is jumping back and forth.
Okay, let me exit out of this and come back in. Not sure why it did that. There, is that better?
Perfect.
All right, tonight is the 2020 street projects assessment hearing for May 18th, 2020. Purpose of the hearing is to review and explain the assessment costs of the approved projects and to obtain input from interested parties concerning the assessments. This page shows the 3 different projects we have currently going. It really does not like me moving that bar. 9th Street Northeast, 9th Street Southeast, 6th Street Northeast, and 23rd Street through 23rd Avenue Northeast, and Civic Center Drive. The overlays we're doing is 1st Street South, and that's from 19th Avenue south to the edge of town in front of Menards, as well as Civic Center Drive. Improvement hearing was held on March 2nd. Tonight is the assessment hearing, May 18th. The plan is to begin construction between June and July of this year, and end construction, the current for substantial completion is September 25th of this year. This chart shows a little bit of history from 2010, so for the last 10 years of reconstruction and overlay projects, and how the assessments have progressed or increased in value in those 10 years. And as you can see, the last 3 years we've held the assessment values of the $85 for reconstruct and $45 for an overlay at a flat value. This year, the reminder notice will go out in September. Partial prepayments are allowed without interest before October 31st, and a full payment without interest by that time as well. If you wait until next year, the payments, including interest, are collected annually, along with property taxes by the county, until the assessments are paid in full. So your first payment is due May 15th. Your second half payment would be due October 15th, and prepayments are allowed of $1,500 or more before November 15th. This gives you some more details of the approved projects, and this is 2001A, 2001B, and 2003A. 2001A project total $1,583,761.50, and that is the reconstruction of 9th Street Southeast from Pleasant View Drive to Willmar Avenue Southeast. Project number 2001B, project total $517,537.50. That is the reconstruct of 6th Street Northeast and 23rd Avenue Northeast, and that goes from the dead end to 26th Avenue on 6th, and from 6th to Country Club Drive Northeast on 23rd Avenue. 2003A is the overlay project of 1st Street South. It goes from approximately 680 feet south of 28th Avenue to 19th. So from 19th Avenue south to there's a pavement joint in front of Menards that will be the ending point of this project. By the way, these dollar amounts include there are projects total as listed. So they include contingencies and engineering in these figures. As a summary, the total assessed projects, $2,933,850.72. Property owners have been assessed, or are proposed to be assessed rather, $718,020.90, leaving the city share of $2,215,829.82. And that is using a reconstruction assessment of $85 per lineal foot. That's front footage of your lot, address, front footage, and overlay assessment per foot of $45. And that is the short presentation I have, Mr. Mayor. I can turn it back to you. I think I can release my screen unless you would like me to keep this screen up on the video.
I think you released the screen. Our first caller, we're ready for our first caller, Mr. Smeeby.
Mr. Mayor, at this time we have Ardell and Anna Stiles. They would like to speak on the street improvements for 9th Street Southeast in Pleasant View. And I will put them into the room in 1 second. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, this is Ardell Stiles and my husband Chuck. We live at 1410 9th Street Southeast, and also my daughter is present with me, Anna Stiles, who lives at 1408. And then we have another daughter and her husband who live at 1404. They are not able to be present here this evening, but we all three have some areas of concern in regard to this project. We are completely for the street improvements, but one thing that we've thought about and we know is a problem with 9th Street. It still has a much larger flow of traffic going up and down it, even with the opening of 5th Street that goes through the Candy Mall edge parking. And so my son-in-law raised the concern about the percentage of the assessment that the homeowners are charged or will be charged for this project when it's a lot more traffic that's using that street than just lives there. How do you handle that on other main thoroughfare streets as far as figuring out the assessment rate?
Mr. Christensen, can you answer the question, please?
Yes, I can, Mr. Mayor. And I've got in your packet, I believe I have the information that shows what the assessment policy reads is actually 75% of the cost can be charged, or should be charged rather, to the property owner. That rate on 9th Street, by the way, would be $303 per foot. Now that's what the assessment policy says. We've long ago, and many clerks and councils and engineers before me have backed off of that 75% rate, as it becomes a little bit harder to justify the benefit to the property owners at that rate, at that $303. We're charging $85, so that's 75% of the construction cost. This $85 would amount to about 25% cost. And so I feel like we've already done what I was talking about in backing that rate off because of the additional traffic on that, or that's one of the items, one of the additional reasons we backed that off was because of the additional traffic there. But the 75% rate was just not viewed as a legitimate number to charge the residents, which is why we've done the $85.
Paul, does that answer your question?
John,
I
could you-
didn't quite follow.
They feel like they've already knocked it down. But is 9th Street any lesser of an amount than 10th, 11th, or 12th Street Southeast?
No, it's not. All of the city streets are assessed at the same rate unless it's commercial property. And so our assessment policy calls for us to be able to charge up to 75%, and we're charging substantially less than that. On a total reconstruct, which your street is, we're charging that at $85 a foot. If we follow the assessment policy, it would be over $300. So we already have taken a reduction to all of the streets within the street improvement total reconstruction program. So it's a consistent number across the city. You have a follow-up question?
Okay. Well, if that's basic, then in other words, what you're saying is it's basically set in stone then for the rate. There isn't any further possibility of reconsideration.
No, I'm not saying that. This is the assessment hearing where the council has the ability to change that rate if they wish, but this is the same rate that we have charged for the last 3 years. And so we're hearing your concern, but we're giving you the facts at this point. And then after that, the council will make a decision as to whether they want to make an adjustment or not. At this time, we're in the fact gathering phase, and we've heard your concern about traffic concerns and the equality of the assessment and your property on 9th Street Southeast. Did you have anything else to add?
Well, I just, well, anyway, I guess just personally, I've noticed, the condition of the street services in Pleasant View addition there, when no matter which street you take, you can tell 10th Street is slightly better than 9th Street, but then 11th Street and 12th Street are tremendously smoother. And I just am assuming it's because of the flow of traffic that way. So I'll just add that on.
Well, we walk all of those streets, and 9th Street definitely sees more traffic.
Yeah.
Certainly, we understand that. Our city administrator would like to make a comment as well. Administrator Granitz.
And Mr. Mayor and city council members, it sounds like there was some turbulence in the audio. So I was just going to ask our city engineer, when you said it was 75%, and then it was garbled when you said the percentage of the $85, could you just repeat that for clarity purposes?
Yeah, sorry about that. Of course, it wasn't garbled on my end, so I can't. I'm glad you said something. The 75%, yes, is exactly right. Is up to that amount per the policy. The $85 represents about 24 to 25% of the construction cost.
Okay, yes, I didn't hear that either, so thank you for clarifying that. Okay, another concern that I have, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something first. What is the estimated timing, do you think, or when somebody can determine that? I'd like to know that after everything is all dug up and we are no longer able to bring vehicles to the driveways, because we don't live on a typical type of block where you have streets all the way around with 2 rows of houses, we can't drive to the next street and walk through backyards to get to our house. by parking on the next street over that isn't being under construction. When we come home with bags of groceries or other big things to carry, what do you have for a solution to that? Since we've got the water ditch running along the backs of all of the 9th Street houses.
Yeah, the goal is that we make it so that you can get into your property every day. If there's specific concerns that you have, you can talk to our city engineer, and they will try to accommodate you. Also, you need to understand that because of the weather, we may not be able to keep it open all the time, but that is our goal, is so that you could be able to get to your home every day. Now, not all day, but for a portion of the day. And we try to communicate that with you the best that we can. And so we'll try to communicate very well. We kind of addressed that a little bit last year, and we kind of improved our process on that notification. So I think you'll find it considerably better than we've had in the past.
Okay. I do have one idea that has come to my mind that I will toss out to you, just in case. But there would be the possibility that I think just about any of us along that water ditch could drive up the far side of the ditch to the west and park our cars there close to our homes. And then the way to get across the ditch could be, if it was possible, to bring in a pre-made little arched bridge or footbridge of some sort that was long enough to plop down across the ditch with a crane of some sort, and like every other house possibly, or I don't know. Anyway, that was just a scenario that popped into my mind. If there wasn't a way to allow us to get, but like you say, if it's possible to do it a portion of time every day, that's better than I realized that it might be.
Our city engineer will take that into consideration, and that I think may be cost prohibitive, but Mr. Christensen, can you look into the expense of that and what that would add to the project?
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you. And then can you get back with Ms. Stiles?
Okay.
So you'll hear back from our city engineer or someone from the engineering office on that comment that you made. You have a additional comment?
I think that's all I have. No, and my daughter says no. Okay, so I guess that's it. I appreciate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in. And you can listen to us on Rack 8 if you turn on Willmar area access channel, and you can listen to the rest of the conversation. Thank you for calling.
What is the number on the dial?
181.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet. Chris, we're ready for the next. I'm sorry, Dave, we're ready for the next person.
Mr. Mayor, the next person we have is Carl Swenson. He would like to speak on 9th Street Southeast. I believe his address is 1413 in Pleasant View. And I will put him through in 1 second. Go ahead, Carl.
Okay. My questions are, with this new assessments on my street, what is it going to be all about? Is it going to be sidewalks, new curbs, new street, water, sewer? This is what I would like to know.
Mr. Christensen, can you help out on that? I think it's total reconstruct, but does that include sidewalk there? I don't think it does down in that area. You're unmuted. You got to unmute, Sean.
I clicked it once. Sorry about that. Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, Mr. Swenson, that does not include sidewalk unless you currently have sidewalk and it's broken beyond repair. But the street reconstruct does not include sidewalk, but it does include curb gutter, all your utilities, and new pavement surface and driveway approaches.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. No sidewalks because we don't have any over in this area.
Correct. You will not be getting them.
Okay. I'm going to tell you one thing. I cannot work. I'm disabled. I am on SSDI, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford this because there's no way I can pay it up front. It's going to have to be in a monthly payment through for 10 years, which is what I received on the information. I got this letter. You know, my house payment is quite high enough the way it is. Because county already raised it too. And now I've got to deal with this. So, you know, there's some sort of application I guess I can get. And I've got till October to do this. Okay. And there's a number figure for $8,500 proposed to on my private property. Okay. Now, how close is that?
That number should be very close if the council adopts the resolution as it's submitted today. What I will tell you is that Mr. Swenson, contact Judy Thompson down at City Hall, and she will help you with that deferment because you are eligible, depending upon your income levels and your disability, you may be eligible for some help with that. It would not decrease the total assessment. It would just help with the payment side of it. So you need to contact Ms. Thompson to get that worked out.
Okay. Sounds very good.
And her number should be listed on that paper that you have.
Right. Yes, I did see that. So, anyway, let's say it doesn't work out for me. Okay, so I have to pay the $8,500, and then there's 3.5% added on for interest.
Correct. There's an interest added onto it if you don't pay by the due date of October 31st.
Well, there's no way I can pay it by the due date.
Yeah, who has that kind of money?
You know, I don't have $8,500 laying around. So it would have to be in the monthly installment, and it gets paid through my house payment. So you tell me what that extra would be.
Get a hold of Ms. Thompson, and she will walk you through those steps.
Okay, I will.
What's her name?
Thank you very much. Thanks for the call.
Yes, definitely.
Dave, do we have anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, we do not have any other callers.
Okay. Mr. Christensen.
Mr. Mayor, I received, or actually Judy rather, the clerk received one letter that is also on 9th Street that I can read if you would prefer.
Would you please? Normally the mayor reads these into the record, but I had not received it in time to read it. So Sean had sent me an email this afternoon that I was unable to respond to. So, Mr. Christensen, go ahead.
Mayor, members of the council, this is a letter of objection to the proposed assessment by the City of Willmar and 4th Street and other improvements. In regard to the proposed assessment by the City of Willmar for street and other improvement projects and the effect for my property at 1217 9th Street Southeast, parcel number 95-670-0250, legal description lot 5, block 2 of Pleasant View Addition, and as owner of the stated property, I object and appeal the amount of $8,500 assessed against stated property. The city has included no information on how that amount was arrived at. The current coronavirus pandemic finds me laid off from my full-time job. My return to work unclear, and now being assessed by the city an amount of $8,500 to be paid by October 31st, 2020 for streets and other improvements. The notice letter includes information about interest if not paid in full by the date of October 31st, 2020 to be at the rate of 3.75% accruable on September 1st, 2020. Current rates of a 10-year mortgage as of today, May 18th, 2020 is between 2.65% and 2.85% on a 10-year mortgage, the same amount of time the taxable assessment period. It's clear that this amount of interest is of significant value to the city, but quite a bit out of an annual household budget. This creates an enormous hardship for myself, a sole owner of the stated property, and has kept me awake, struggling with this economic blow in a time of sheer uncertainty. I too am discovering other upgrades needed to my property as well, updating worn out cabinets and countertops, a badly needed bathroom remodel, along with typical maintenance and repairs, all financially out of reach now with this assessment amount. It is with that I am appealing the amount assessed against my property. Also, any information on special grants or low interest loans I may qualify for in way of this project assessment. Sharon Bankston, 1217 9th Street Southeast, Willmar, Minnesota.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, do you have any comments?
No, I can give her a call and explain the income guidelines that we have if she would qualify for that.
Mr. Christensen, any additional comments?
No, sir, not at this time.
City Administrator Gramitz, any additional comments?
None at this time.
City Attorney Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe before you close the public hearing, there are two objections for the council to pass upon, meaning that you should either pass a motion to reject the objection or to grant it in whole or part. The two objections are from the Sileses on 9th Street Southeast, who are objecting to the percentage of the cost being assessed on that project, on that street, not being reduced in some amount to account for the increased traffic flow on 9th Street. And the objection you just heard from Ms. Bankston, just apparently to the overall amount being assessed. So before the public hearing is closed, I would recommend that the council take motions on both of those objections.
Mr. Scott, how about Mr. Swenson, who had an objection as well, although he may not have clearly stated what his objection was. It was the inability to pay. I mean, it wasn't clearly stated, but...
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, sometimes the comments aren't in the form of an objection. They're more presenting questions, and I construed Mr. Swenson's comments as more questions about the deferment option, but certainly if the council would like to make a motion on his comments as well, it's certainly able to do that.
Certainly. Mr. Gramitz.
Mr. Mayor and Council and City Attorney, am I correct in stating that the Stiles telephone call represented at least three parties as compared to one?
Yes, it did.
I would agree, yes.
And so that then would reflect that there would need to be a motion on all three parcels. Is that what? Although one of the family members wasn't present, there was two families present on the telephone call, as I understood it.
Yeah, 1410 was present and 1408 was present. 1404 was not present, although they had the same objection. So I think the best way to do that would be to handle those independent, because they're independent parcels. And I don't know who owns those individual pieces.
Mr. Mayor, I think if you simply reference the addresses, and I have them as 1410, 1408, and 1404 9th Street Southeast, that'll be sufficient.
Thank you. And then the 1217 address as well?
Correct.
Okay. Additional comments from staff? Any other staff members? Okay, with that, Council, I'm looking for direction on the Stiles concern over traffic and the fact that their costs should be decreased because of the added traffic onto their street. I would look for a motion for the 1410, 1408, and 1404 19th Street Southeast objection. Council, looking for a motion. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some clarification from Mr. Scott. You're looking for a motion with the language specifically saying what?
That's up to the council to decide what the motion should say, either upholding the cost or making a reduction or recommending a reduction, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I would say there's actually three options on the table that the council has. One would be a motion to reject the objection, and that would essentially mean you would continue, and after the public hearing is closed, you could simply adopt the rule as presented. So if you don't wish to make any alterations, it should be a motion to reject the objection. Your other option tonight to deal with it would be to grant the objection, which would require you to specify the amount of the reduction in the proposed assessment for that property. Third, if you don't feel you have sufficient information to do, if you were inclined to grant the objection in some part or needed more information, you could certainly continue this. And with respect to any property, you are able to continue the hearing just with respect to that property and adopt the assessment rule on the other property. So those are the three options.
With that, I would motion to reject the objections and continue.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, motion by Plowman, seconded by Schwantes, to reject the objections from the Stiles at property addresses 1410, 1408, and 1404 9th Street Southeast. Discussion, Councilmember Meske.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the past, when we've had some other very busy roads like Trot, Lakewood Drive, and such. We've done improvements on those. Have we ever had a reduction based on traffic flow on those? And if we do, is there some kind of we put out counters and whatnot to measure traffic? I'm just curious on some of those variables that aren't here.
I'm not aware that there's ever been a reduction based on traffic counts. Mr. Christensen, if that's incorrect, give me some nod of some sort that you wish to speak, but otherwise I'm not aware that that's ever been done in the 20 years that I've been with the city.
That's correct, Mayor, as far as I know.
Additional comments? Councilmember Alvarado.
I agree with the motion, but I was wondering, would it be possible to maybe ease on the amount of interest that we charge? Interest rates are going down right now. Would it be possible to look at reducing what the 3% is, and I don't know what a good figure would be, but could we look at that portion of it because of the reduced interest rates at the national level?
Councilmember Alvarado, generally there's a committee that's put together of staff that review current bond rates and carrying costs and also the administrative costs, and that's all put into the formula. And then there is a number that is agreed upon by staff on what that number should be, and that's what we charge. But the council certainly has the ability to change the interest rate or even the dollar amount per foot on any of the projects. That is at the total discretion of the council. The staff simply is making a recommendation. So you certainly could make that as an amendment. And you may want to consider that you would do that to all projects and just not the Stiles project, but that would be up to you. You could make either, would be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just listen to the discussion.
Councilmember Metzke.
It was my understanding that the next objection was about interest rates. If I'm not mistaken, I think this one was simply about the traffic flow reduction. So I think, is that not what the objection was, City Attorney Scott, for the next objection?
Yeah, the Stiles did not object on the interest rate. But I think Councilmember Alvarado was making a general statement in regards to interest. I think what he was doing is forward thinking on this, I think. I don't want to speak for him, but that's what it appeared to me. To try to be consistent with everybody, is that right, Councilmember Alvarado?
Yeah, correct. What I was hoping for is leaving the rate at 85, possibly discussing whether or not we could reduce the interest charged on all projects, not just the Stiles project or, objection. I was thinking more of a broader scope. I wouldn't narrow it down to one or two. That gets to be too complicated, and I don't think that would be reasonable for our staff to have to deal with. So I was thinking globally. Thank you.
Councilmember Osmus.
Just to weigh in on that, which is also going to carry over into the next motion on the next case, I feel like 3% is, not that we're going to make that decision, but 3% is, I think, a fair amount. I believe somebody just closed on a house today and it was at 3.65. A month ago, it was 2, but now it's been brought back up again. And this is, if somebody was to refinance, you think at this point right now, they're going to pay more than 3%. So I just think 3 is fair. And I don't think it isn't, I don't think like we're auguring anybody that it's out of line.
Okay, I'm going to quote back to the question. The question is on the Stiles, in that the question is their concern was about traffic and about costs. And I'll go to our city administrator, Mr. Gramerson. I think it's 3.75, wasn't it? Percent, or was it a flat 3?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I don't have that on my piece of paper in front of me, but maybe Mr. Elkins can explain the process that's used, because historically, for most cities, they sell the bond rate and then they add on a certain percentage to deal with the administration costs of the project. And I believe by state law, you can't go above 2% above what the interest rate is. So if your interest rate was 1.5, the maximum you could do is 2 on top of that for 3.5. But you can always be somewhere in the middle, And I've seen many cities have just rounded off. So if you had like 1.9 and you added 2 onto that, they would round it down to 3.75 or something, just to make it easy. But Mr. Elkins, maybe you could take the time to explain how the city of Willmar calculates that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the city assessment policy does have that factor included in the policy, where the city will add 2% above the interest rate that the bonds are sold at. The past practice is that the interest rate will not be increased above the notice if the bonds are able to be sold at less than the estimate of 175. The interest rate would be reduced to no more than 2% over the net interest cost of the bonds.
Okay, so do we want to continue the discussion in regards to interest? It appears to me that that's the direction we're going. I thought I was trying to close that discussion, but we want to continue that discussion. Let's continue that discussion. Additional discussion on the interest rates. Can someone tell me what the interest rate that we are proposing is?
On the I have for cleaner when I was there. So,
Mr. Christensen.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe we put 3.75 in the letters.
Additional discussion on the interest rate.
I'm in agreement with what Councilmember Osma said. 3.75 is a reasonable amount, and I can go along with that. I was just throwing it out there to see if there was a opportunity to assist, but I think that's a good rate. Thank you.
Additional discussion on the interest rate. Okay, now we'll go back to the motion that's on the table. The motion on the table is to deny the appeal of the Stiles based on traffic concerns and costs of the project because of the additional traffic that they have on their lots at 1410, 1408, and 1404 9th Street Southeast. Additional discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Alvarado?
Aye.
Osmus?
Aye.
Plowman?
Aye.
Nelson?
abstain.
Hagerly?
Aye.
Eskey?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 abstain.
That motion passes. Next, we have the Swensons, who were Mr. Swenson, who lives at 1413 9th Street Southeast. He was concerned about the interest rate and the cost. Mr. Scott, is there anything else that you had documented in regards to that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, no, I didn't. I had mainly interpreted his comments as questions about what the project would entail, which were answered, questions about the deferment process, which I believe was answered. But I do believe there is at least a current of unhappiness with the assessment amount, so certainly the council could treat it as an objection and pass upon it as well.
That was the mayor's mistake. The mayor made a mistake. I had written it down there. I meant to talk about 1217, Mr. Bingston. I apologize. The city attorney had previously stated that Swenson was not an objection to his questions. So again, his was on cost and the interest rate. So I had the cost and the interest rate right, but I just had the address wrong. Council, what are your wishes?
Motion to reject the objection.
Second.
Motion by Plowman, seconded by Schwantes to reject the objection at 1217 based on cost per linear foot and the interest rate. There's no discussion. Councilmember Meskey.
I would say some of the callers, I mean, I was subjected to a street improvement last year. It would not be a bad idea. I know we have sort of a set letter we send out, but I would think it might be a good idea to explain sort of how that interest rate is calculated and perhaps some additional information about who to get a hold of and such for access concerns, because I mean, I've been sitting through a lot of these things every year, and it seems to be the same set of questions that come up every year. If there's a way to perhaps expand some of the notification out, I know it's pretty straight to the point, but interest rate calculation and maybe a little bit of how access is going to be handled, because I mean, I know the builders will help you, the construction folks will help you as well. I mean, ours, they even moved our trash cans out to where they could be picked up and moved our mail out to where it could be accessed. So there are some of those things that I think would alleviate some concerns for folks. And it sounds like 9th Street is one of those where they may not have as good of access as other places. I know we were in a similar situation. So I'm not speaking against or for the motion, but just maybe in this whole process, a way to maybe elaborate on some of those most common questions.
Additional comments, Councilor Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, towards this motion and the others, and then also as a great segue by Councilman Meskey, I think we do a good job of providing that notification, but also, again, I think there's an opportunity for public outreach in that when we're talking about costs, because we all know it's very, very expensive, but just like Mr. Meskey, we had an office building property personally that was assessed and that there was construction last year. And of course, you see the price tag and it's up there. But when you see the actual cost, and I think when you have all of the information, as Mr. Christensen provides it, when you see the full cost and then take a look at what the city could charge as opposed to what we do charge for those assessments, I think there's a great disparity in that dollar figure. And I think if that was more transparent or more clear, and I'm not saying that we're trying to hide that, I'm just saying if there was a way to even simplify that and bring it to the front even more to show people that, yes, this is costing you a bunch of money, but it could cost you a whole lot more. But as per our policy, it's not, because the greatest bulk of the price tag is being taken up by the city. I think that would also go a long ways. And yeah, I mean, we all of us living inside the city at some point or another, we're going to face these costs personally. And we know that it also, it's not cheap, and we have the same feelings that, man, that's expensive. But once you have all of the information, you do realize that it's not as bad as what it could be. And so, like I said, it's a possible opportunity for community outreach. Thanks.
Additional comments or questions to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, the motion is to reject the objection based on cost and interest rate at 1217 9th Street Southeast. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Bauman.
Aye.
Nelson. Same. Bagerly.
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
Swantis.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstain.
That motion passes as well. At this point, additional comments by staff in regards to the public hearing. Ross, and I'm just confirming that we have nobody else in queue, correct? Did we lose Ross? Dave, do you know, do we have anybody in queue?
He just posted in the comments, Mr. Mayor, no one is in queue.
Okay, I'm not getting that on my chat, so it must have been just straight to you. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing, bring it to the council. Council, what are your wishes? There are 3 different resolutions that need to be adopted here. So I will close the public hearing. Council?
Motion to adopt the assessment roll for the 2020 assessment projects.
Second.
Motion by Plowman, seconded by Schwantes. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Abstain.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis. Aye. 7 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstain.
That resolution passes. Next, I'll entertain a resolution for project 2001A, project total of $1,583,761.50 for reconstruction of 19th Street Southeast, Pleasant View Drive Southeast to Willmar Avenue Southeast. I'll entertain that resolution now.
I'll introduce that.
Councilmember Meskey.
Second.
Schwantes. Motion by Meskey, seconded by Schwantes. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Abstain.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Alvarado. 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 Seven ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstain.
That resolution passes. Next, I'd entertain a resolution for 2001B, project total of $517,537.50. It's to reconstruct a 6th Street Southeast from the dead end to 26th Avenue Northeast and 23rd Avenue Northeast, 6th Street Northeast to Country Club Drive Northeast. And I've entertained that resolution now.
Osmus will make the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Osmus, seconded by Fagerly. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Alvarado.
Aye.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes as well. Next, I'd entertain a resolution for 2003A, project total $832,551.72. It's an overlay of First Street South, approximately 860 feet south of 28th Avenue to 19th Avenue. I'd entertain that a resolution.
I would make a motion to accept the bid and award for project number 2003A, First Street overlay to Dunnick by Dunnick to complete the project.
Second. Osmus.
A motion by Alvarado, seconded by Osmus. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Alvarado. Alvarado. Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes as well. As the council will remember, last meeting, we approved a resolution to award the Civic Center project. So that is the entirety of the street project for this year. And that was awarded at our last council meeting, and that was awarded to Dunix as well. Additional discussion. Seeing and hearing none, I'll go to the Public Works Safety Committee report of May 6th. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Works and Safety Committee met Wednesday, May 6th by electronic means, and I believe the time was around 5 o'clock or just after. Those present were myself, Councilwoman Osmus, Councilman Alvarado, and Councilwoman Nelson. Others present are Public Works Director, Mr. Christensen, our Fire Chief Hansen, our Police Chief, Mr. Felt, and our Engineering Administrative Assistant, Ms. Del Bosque. The meeting was called to order at 5:07. There was nobody for public comment, so we then received our public safety updates. They're included in our packet of statistics. And now would be a good time. I do believe that we have one or both chiefs on the line. Now would be a good time for anybody to ask any questions. I will note that this was regarding an incident or immediately followed a incident with our local law enforcement. And so we did have a good discussion at the time about that, but this would be also another good time to ask any questions of either Chief Felt or either chief.
It might be good, seeing that you guys had a discussion in regards to that incident. There's 4 members in the mayor that weren't able to hear that. There might be would that be an appropriate time to get a debrief on that, or is it something that we should just listen to the tape on?
Well, we can certainly go to Chief Felt. I think that would be a great opportunity for Chief Felt to maybe give us an updated synopsis on the findings of the BCA and maybe answer any questions that any other members of the council does have. I have the same minutes here that everybody else does, but obviously that discussion that was had at the table, I think right now would be an excellent opportunity to ask those questions of our chief if anybody has them. Chief Felt, if I can ask, are you with us on the line?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Would it be all right to maybe just give a brief synopsis of, I guess I can't recall the specific conversation, but I think what we did is we just listened to kind of a basic, just like the mayor said, he put it perfectly, a debriefing regarding the situation. I know that we all heard the same information around the table, but it may be good to just share that information with the others in the council, and then it would also be a part of the public meeting record as well.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. A very abbreviated synopsis of what happened is officers were called to a residence in Willmar for a domestic dispute early one morning it was on May 1st. Officers arrived. They encountered a gentleman with 2 knives in the residence who was threatening harm to himself. The initial officer tried to intervene, used some de-escalation tactics, taser. That was unsuccessful. The individual charged at her and stabbed her several times. She discharged her firearm into the suspect. Backup arrived. They were able to subdue the individual. However, the BCA also made the determination and the medical examiner that during that incident, the individual cut his own throat and was ruled as he died by suicide. The investigation is still ongoing. Mainly now it's the evidentiary steps at the BCA. The full report at some point will be going to the county attorney for review here, but happy to report that the officer that was stabbed is making a good recovery. We're hopeful that she will be able to return to work the beginning of June. The other 2 officers that were placed on administrative leave will be back this coming week now. So that's the very short and condensed version.
Thank you, Chief Felt, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that was a good idea to have our police chief update us on that scenario. And also now we're all getting the same most up-to-date information regarding our officer and officers that did an excellent job in dealing with that situation. And as we noted at the meeting, that these are the types of incidents that kind of show you to the bone we don't want to hear about in our community. But seeing the response both immediately from our local law enforcement and then subsequently, after the transport and the medical attention took place, and as our officer was also able to return home, all the agencies in between here and St. Cloud that took part in that just kind of goes to show the great community and how we're all intertwined, and our law enforcement agencies well respected in the area. So thank you, Chief Felt, and please extend that thanks to our officers as well. Any other questions for either Chief Felt or Chief Hansen? Okay, moving on. Our next item, our first item of business then was regarding park signage, and this did come with a motion along with it. Just a little bit of history, and there's some stuff in the packet as well. Several of the existing park signs around town are made of wood materials and are in need, and I would venture desperate need of replacement. Discussion on replacement of the park signs took place at the Park and Rec Board, and it's their recommendation to approve the design presented in the packet, specifically labeled the Fergus Falls Ferber Park Design Composite Material. And that's a good reference. Not the exact signs that we're going to be getting, but a good reference to the shape, design, and materials. The Park and Rec Board recommendation was brought to the Public Works and Safety Committee for discussion. The committee discussed old signage that is already established at some of the newer park projects, and the recommendation of this sign design and material. The Willmar parks are defined as a regional, which is Robbins Island, community parks, Rice, Miller, Northside, and Lincoln, and neighborhood parks, Gesh, Sunrise, Voss, and Hilltop. Each park designation could have a sign design assigned to it, or the city could designate one uniform sign design for all parks. This could also mean the materials are different, but the design is the same. Staff was asked to bring back options on different material types. One option for the sign is to use the same composite material as the regional and community park designs. The composite material is more costly than the option of the aluminum material. The aluminum signs would have a white vinyl sleeve on the post instead of the rock pillars as seen on the composite sign photos. I believe we have those. Good example is Miller. If the aluminum sign is selected, staff would recommend installing a concrete pad around the sign base to help with maintenance and protection of the sign, mowing, weed trimming, and etc. Other discussion items, we have to set consistency with the signage throughout the park system. Willmar would have roughly 30 parks to replace or add signage to, which we've already began. We just want to continue with. Staff would develop a replacement plan to replace a certain amount of signage each year, depending on available budget dollars. Public Works would be able to install these signs, so that would be some cost saving for us. The action that was taken, I'll have to go back to our minutes here because I'm jumping around, I apologize. But a motion was made and seconded to approve the sign design as aluminum material for the specific reasons of being able to replace the current signs, but also the existing signs, but also future signs. We could be changing and adding different information and whatnot. So we're recommending the use of aluminum as being durable, no rust, having a 10 to 15 year life expectancy, and that motion carried. I will enter that as a motion now.
Osmus, second.
Motion has been made and seconded by Osmus to approve the sign design and aluminum material for the replacement of existing and future signs for the city of Willmar. Discussion, Councilmember Spontus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to note I really appreciate the work and effort that went into
the new design. I think it looks very attractive. One concern I would have is, I think it was about a year ago, there was discussion about changing the logo for the city. If we did that and the logo is on the signs, we would end up replacing an awful lot of signs. And so for that consideration only, I would recommend that we have the uniform sign design for all of the parks. Pillars are great, rather, I understand the cost of the rocks, but that would be my only concern.
Just for discussion. Councilman Plowman, I just have a question, and I don't know if it's a question for you or for our Public Works, our Park and Rec director, but did we not also have a regional park of Swanson Field in addition to Robbins Island? Because this just says that it's Robbins Island is the regional park, but I know not all parks are listed, but I just thought that we had determined that to be a regional park as well.
I am not going to venture. I believe I know the answer, but I'm not going to venture a guess. I would defer to anybody else on the council with the Park and Rec Board and the master plan, because I remember discussing this as a part of the master plan, but I did not know whether or not Swanson was going to be identified as a regional park with the signage that the regional parks were to have. So I defer that to staff or somebody else familiar with the topic.
I see Rob turned his light on, so maybe Rob's got an answer.
Yes, Mayor, member of the council. Swanson is considered part of the regional park system.
Okay, thank you. Additional comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Bachman.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
You're still muted, Councilmember Plowman, or maybe I was. Councilmember Plowman.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear anything from you, but that's all right. Technical glitch. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item for discussion was the Robbins Island four-season shelter and our third change order. Ram General Contracting was awarded the Robbins Island four-season shelter construction project at the August 19th council meeting. Construction began in September for the 3,100 square foot building, including a community room and public restrooms. Change order 3 resulted from the movage, I don't even know if that's a word, but I used it, of 294 cubic yards of engineered fill for soil corrections per the contractor that needed to take place for that building. The total for these changes increased the contract amount by $11,409.56. Just a little bit of background. We awarded this total project in the amount of $925,152. Large portion of that was picked up by a grant that we received. And just to let you know, the total of the change orders is 3. This is the third change order. And this would put the change order totals at $37,670.55. We are still within our contingency amount, budgeted at $92,000. So we are about a third of the way through that. And the project is, well, further than a third done. So we don't anticipate anymore. We cross our fingers and hope that this is it, but we deem this necessary. So I am going to enter the motion approving change order number 3, Robbins Island four-season shelter in the amount of $11,409.56.
I second that.
Motion by Plowman, seconded by Alvarado, to approve the change order number 3. Discussion. I just want to commend staff on the thorough report, including what the change order totals are up to date, and then also how much contingency is there. It's nice to have all the document numbers in one place. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. Roll call.
Councilmember Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our final item that has action requiring tonight is project number 2001-C, West Highway 12 Water Main Plan and Specification Approval. A portion of water line on West Trunk Highway 12 in conjunction with the Willmar Y project needs to be replaced. The project includes replacing existing 8-inch ductile iron water main with 12-inch PVC from 800 feet west of 19th Street to 28th Street Northwest, and also replacing existing 12-inch ductile iron water main with 12-inch PVC from 28th Street to 30th Street. The plans and specifications for the above-mentioned project have been completed and are ready for bidding and construction. The financial impact is as follows. It's estimated at $402,000, including construction, engineering, and contingencies. Willmar Municipal Utilities will be splitting the construction cost in accordance with the Willmar Y Master Utility Agreement. I believe that split is a 50-50 split. I'm going to look to our city engineer to confirm that or tell me that I am wrong. Funding sources, again, MUC 167,500, the city 167,500, coming from our industrial park funds, and 67,000 will come through bonding through engineering and contingencies, again giving us a total of $402,000. And I will enter the motion authorizing the advertisement for bids for project number 2001-C, West Highway 12 Water Main.
I second that.
Motion by Plowman, seconded by Alvarado. Discussion. And Mr. Christensen, do you have an answer to Chair Plowman's question?
Yes, I do, Mayor, members of the council, and I apologize. I thought that 50-50 split was in the documentation, and if it is not, I apologize for that, but that is correct, 50% split on the construction.
Additional comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis, aye. Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman, Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes as well. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We didn't have any other action items for the night. We just discussed some upcoming meeting dates that we're going to have. I believe as the construction season continues to pick up and whatnot, we're going to be adding to our calendar. And if any members of the committee or anybody else has items public works or public safety related, please email myself or our public works director or our park and rec director so that we can get these items added to our future agendas. With that, we had adjourned our meeting at 6:23, and I will move to file the minutes.
Second.
Second.
I'm going to take Nelson as a second. I believe she was in before you were, Osmus. Motion file minutes by Plowman, seconded by Nelson. Discussion on the minutes. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Eskey,
Aye.
Swantis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
The motion to file the minutes has passed. Next, we'll have the Community Development Committee minutes from their meeting. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met Monday, May 11th with go-to meeting. Present was myself, Davis, Muskie, and Swantis. Others present was Dr. Ramstead, Sarah Swedberg, City Planner, Administrator Gramitz, Mayor Kelvin, Chief Police Felt, the West Central Tribune, and Ben Larson, a community member. Our item number 2 was allowance of chickens in residential zones. This was a discussion with information only. Staff presented for discussion the allowance of chickens in residential zones of Willmar. The current city ordinance from December 2012 states that chickens are prohibited in all zoning districts in the city except the ag or industrial districts within which no more than 50 chickens can be kept. The request to revisit and redraft the chicken ordinance was initiated by Ben Larson and other community members. Staff stated they have received a total of 20 correspondence, 14 residents were in support, 6 letters were in opposition. The most notable objections was from Dr. Weilman of Select Genetics and Dr. Cardone of the Department of Veterinary and Biomedical Sciences at the University of Minnesota. Mr. Larson presented his reasoning for why he would like to have Willmar's Community Committee consider changing the current city ordinance so that chicken coops would be allowed within the city limits. Mr. Larson stated that he began looking into the topic about a year ago in hopes of increasing people's ability to source protein through eggs. He pointed to centralized food system shortages as a reason for why this is a good time to begin allowing chicken coops in Willmar neighborhoods. In addition, Mr. Larson pointed to research gathered by the statewide Health Improvement Partnership and Public Health Law Center. To control odors from the chicken coops, Larson suggested that the city ordinance could require a compost plan, limit chicken coops to 4 hens, and require maintenance inspections. Council members discussed concerns of noise and smell nuisances, enforcement of standards, vaccinations, and disease. Concern was expressed by Councilmember Swantis and Fagerly regarding the risk that the backyard chickens could pose to the region's poultry industry, particularly in light of the letters of opposition received from the University of Minnesota and Select Genetics. Councilmember Muskie felt that the ordinance was doable if the vaccination and industry safety issues could be clarified. Councilmember Davis agreed. A motion was not made, but instead Councilmember Muskie stated that if additional information about the proper vaccinations of the chickens wasn't made available, the topic may be revised by the committee. Mr. Ben Larson stated that he will do more research with the Public Health Law Center as well as the statewide health initiative program. Mr. Larson was asked to submit any additional information to the Planning and Development Director. I think everyone received a letter by email from the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association by Executive Director Sarah Anderson, and they're opposed to this. This letter Dr. Ramstead has, and he'll be providing that to us on Tuesday when we meet about this issue again. And also we did receive one email from a person that was for having chickens, and now after reading what the professionals say, she is against it. So, but that was all we had to talk about that evening, and we adjourned at 6:02. And if there's no questions, I'll make a motion to file these minutes.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Motion made by Fagerly to file the minutes, seconded by Meskey, I believe. I was looking at a piece of paper, so I believe that's who seconded. Is that correct? How did you second it?
Kathy was faster.
Second by Schwantes. Boy, I tell you, trying to watch all these buttons is unbelievable. And Councilor Pullman, I did see your hand. Councilor Pullman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Fagerly. I received a number of calls today. I actually spent quite a few hours on this topic, which is great because I learned a lot of stuff. After this had gone through the Community Development Committee, it showed up in the news, and I can't remember whether or not it was our local radio station or a print publication, but I, in my typical fashion, I put it to the Facebooks just to garner and put a barometer as to how many people we were talking about, how many people were interested in this. And the overall feedback was quite positive, that there was quite a number of people interested in this. And I myself being, I like, if there doesn't need to be a rule, then why have a rule? But I also think that if there's need for rules and ordinances, then we ought to find out what and clarify what those are. I also did have the opportunity to speak with a couple individuals that I would deem industry experts, and this must be a fairly important topic because somebody from the our West Central Turkey Growers Association I did have a chance to communicate with, as well as somebody from the National Poultry and Food Distributors Association. So that was a national level. They called from Washington, D.C., actually. So they'd like to weigh in on the topic. I also did consult with a family member who will remain nameless, but has been actively involved in this industry for over 15 years. And I was informed that when it comes to this issue in and around Willmar, the turkey growers industry, the local food industry, they're not at all concerned with people sourcing their own food. They're not concerned with people creating sustainable food. Those are all great ideas and good things. What they're concerned about is biosecurity. It is a huge, huge topic, and specifically in Willmar especially, we have such a huge reliance on agriculture, specifically agribusiness. And not only Hormel, but it's the trickle down. It's all of the companies and the industries that are associated with that. And that's everywhere from the financial aspect of it and the accounting aspect of it to the peripheral items, fuel and feed and logistics and transportation and all the businesses associated, and all the way back to the actual growers. The feedback that I got wasn't even necessarily coming from the large industry portion, but just the sheer number of area growers and growers in and around the Willmar community area. And my eyes were really opened to the steps that they've taken, the amounts of money that they've spent since dealing with the avian flu, and just how big and important it is in terms of biosecurity in and around their facilities. The steps that they have taken to distance their facilities from highways simply because of feathers flying off of trucks. They do not want those feathers coming on their property. The number and the amount of attention to detail that they put on the air filtration units going into and out of the barns. They spend millions and millions of dollars, and they don't do that for fun. They do that for biosecurity, to make sure that the product that they're putting out, that these birds are safe and that they're healthy and that the food supply chain is kept intact. So when I was presented with all of this information, and I don't mean to be long-winded, but it is important, because I had initially thought that there shouldn't be a problem with creating this ordinance. It shouldn't be a big deal. But after gathering all the information and spreading it all out and weighing all the pros and cons, I was definitely convinced the other direction, that biosecurity for our poultry in and around the Willmar area, that has to be paramount. And I do think that we do run the risk of putting that in jeopardy if we were to change any current ordinances. So like I said, I apologize for being long-winded, but I thought those discussions were very enlightening. I thought it highlighted a very important and prominent area of business in and around the Willmar area and the Willmar region. And I think it's important to take all of that information and deem it quite important. So thank you for your time in expressing that tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Plowman, for your eloquent comments. I think a lot of us have gotten a lot of phone calls on this. I had a number of phone calls today as well. So, Councilmember Davis.
I just want to say thank you to Councilmember Plowman for researching that so well and for explaining it so well. Thank you.
Additional comments? Seeing hearing none, there's a motion to file the minutes. Roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Bagerly,
Aye.
Eske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Next, we have our Labor Relations Committee. Councilmember Meske.
Labor Relations met on May 11th, and our normal cast of counselors showed up. Meske, Alvarado, Davis, and Schwantes, joined by HR Director Beckman, City Administrator Gramitz, Recreation Director Baumgarn, and Public Works Director Christensen. The only topic we had was actually just for information. As you know, we had a joint powers agreement with the Willmar Public Schools in the city of Willmar to deal with our programming facilities, recreation, and parks, and it lasted for many years, but that did not, it ceases to exist now, and we both decided to go our own ways. We had asked for a follow-up as a council of a sort of a check-in on how that process is working. And so our Recreation Director Baumgarn gave us a presentation. His presentation, if you were not at the meeting, I would urge you to watch it, listen to it. A copy of the PowerPoint is included, but I don't think the PowerPoint by itself would do it justice. You really should listen to it. But what it did is it covered the history of the agreement and where we have been. It then highlights the current positions we have in the city of Willmar with their responsibilities. Also included all the programming that is currently being done on the city's end, and also then talks about future ideas of where the director would like to see it going or where it is going. I would, again, I would say Recreation Director Baumgarn, if you want to chime in with any highlights, feel free, but I really would urge again, if you were not able to be at that meeting, if you're not on that committee, that you would please check it out. And maybe your questions, comments, concerns, or praise can be forwarded to the City Administrator Gramitz. Maybe you could kind of collect those things if people have some comments or questions or praise again or concerns that have risen as you watch those things. But we did ask for that annual repeat. I will not ask him to try to summarize because we truly were engaged for well over an hour of discussion on that point. But I would just throw it out if Recreation Director Baumgarn, you got anything to add to summarize, if you will?
Thank you, Council Member. It's been an exciting 18, 19 months. We've learned a lot as a department. I've learned a lot as a department head about items that we are doing and where we can improve on. I get an eager staff to get ready for summer programming for this year. It's just that we are kind of in limbo about where we're going to be at in the next month. I know we've had a lot of discussion as staff, and City Administrator Gromans and I have been talking a lot lately about our summer programming. A decision will have to come up here shortly about what we are going to do with our facilities and our programs and for our community. But we're excited. A lot of good things are coming out, and we're just looking forward to having a great summer if we're able to have our programs.
Thank you. How it's appropriate, but if anybody, because again, we're not going to hear the whole program here, but any of the other committee members, any highlights that you wish to share? Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Meske, I would just like to add that it was recommended that I watch it, and I think it's about an hour and 8 minutes. I was so impressed with the presentation that was made and the total programming that was covered, all the good things that are happening in spite of everything that, I mean, he even talked about how they were rejuggling things now with the COVID, and the very thorough report. We'd asked for this to be given to the council, and that was an hour and 8 minutes. That was a very good hour and 8 minutes of my time to sit and listen through that, because I was very impressed. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other committee members? All right, again, if you're not on the committee, please take the time to take a look. I think you were sent a direct link for that. Am I missing somebody, Mr. Mayor? Oh, Rick, sorry. Councilmember Begley. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. When will the ballparks be open? I know the pickleball courts are open by Robbins Island, and there's quite a few people. I'm just wondering if the youth baseball, if 10 kids or 8 kids and a coach couldn't be out practicing, because their baseball league is basically done in Minnesota. But Iowa and South Dakota are having tournaments. These kids need to practice so that when they go down there, they can be kind of in shape. So what's the situation?
I assume you're directing that to somebody other than me. Looks like City Administrator Gromans.
Mr. Mayor and council members, the conversations that I've been having with individuals that are desiring to use the baseball diamonds for practice, it really comes down to the latest emergency executive order from Governor Walz, which also then references the DNR COVID-19 outdoor recreational facilities and public guidelines. And if you think of it like this, that they're saying basically that 10 people or less non-family members have the ability to congregate, so nothing larger than 10. So then, you know, I think the idea is that, well, you could probably have, you know, less than that practicing out on a ball diamond. I did ask one of the coaches, and he said, well, they all bring their own bats, so you can sanitize the bats. But on top of that, they're not trading bats between themselves. You can also say baseball is a predominantly non-contact sport as compared to wrestling or football, and that's probably very true. But the DNR has a real difficult time trying to determine how do you sanitize things that aren't hard, metal, plastic, ceramic, whatever. And they talk about life jackets when you rent a canoe or a kayak, that you can't really sanitize that life preserver very well. You can do the paddle, you can do the canoe because that's hard surface. And the same thing applies to baseball. The one thing they throw from child to child is something you cannot sanitize in between use. You just can't do it. It's not in the mix. So while you can sanitize a bat, you could probably sanitize, shin guards, and you probably sanitize all kinds of things. But the thing that we really don't want to have happen is somebody throwing, a ball, and then somebody's taking their bare hand and then throwing the ball to somebody else. That's what this whole social distancing is, so you don't touch people and you don't pass it on. So from what I've been, explaining to people that have been calling me is that the executive order is something that I'm following, and the DNR, COVID-19 outdoor recreation facilities, is something that is referenced in there that we are to follow also. And so we're just basically taking the guidance that the state has provided, which comes around, to answering your question is, I think as far as I'm concerned, when the state says, heck yeah, open up your baseball diamonds for team practice, then I'm all for it. When they talk about tennis, they're saying play tennis with your family members. When you talk about pickleball court, those two games were identified specifically in the material provided by the state, saying, okay, play pickleball, play tennis, because there's not that much transmission. You're not standing next to each other. You're not a catcher standing right behind a batter, that sort of thing. And you're not necessarily, touching the tennis. Well, I guess you can touch the tennis ball with your hands, but you're only supposed to be playing with your family members to start with. So that's a long-winded explanation that I've been, passing on to the people that have been inquiring about this. And as soon as we get a break in the guidelines or the emergency executive orders, we'll open up the ball fields for practice. Nothing stops a mom or a dad to go take their kids out into the park and practice baseball, but to open up our ball diamonds at this point in time to organize play, I don't believe falls in line with the proposed guidelines of the state, the governor's office, or the DNR for outdoor play. So,
thank you for answering that question. Anything else as regards to the Recreation Department evaluation? All right, the last item we talked about was actually just preparing for our next labor meeting. That is Tuesday, May 26th, recognizing the holiday on Monday at 6:15. And remember, that is an all-council meeting to talk about next steps in the process for negotiations. There was no other items that came before labor that evening, so with that, I would move to file the minutes.
Second.
So moved. Motion by Meskey, seconded by Osmus to file the minutes. Discussion. Who said it?
Mr. Mayor, I believe that was Davis who seconded it.
Motion by Meskey, seconded by Davis to file the minutes. Additional discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Hagerly.
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Fretto.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Next, we have the Finance Committee meeting for May 13th. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. The Finance Committee full council met at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, May 13th. In attendance were council members Nelson, Fagerly, Plowman, and Osmus. Also in attendance were Mayor Marv Calvin, Councilmember Meske, Councilmember Alvarado, Councilmember Schwantes, Councilmember Davis, City Administrator Grammett, Finance Director Okens, Park and Rec Director Bumgarn, Public Works Director Christensen, Fire Chief Frank Hansen, Police Chief Jim Felt, Planning and Development Director Dave Ramstead, BRAC 8 Coordinator Rudy Vigil, City Attorney Robert Scott, Baker Tilly Consultants Kathy Aho and Doug Green, and West Central Tribune reporter Shelley Linrud. We called the meeting to order at 5 o'clock, and we had one action item, which was a resolution for the 2020 improvement bonds. Staff explained that annually the City of Willmar has had a street improvement project that fits into the 10-year replacement program. In order to pay the cost of the construction project, the city has bonded for all costs that are not paid for from other current sources like municipal state aid, utility improvement funds, or funds from other governmental agencies. The bonds are normally for a length of 10 years and paid from special assessments, the Community Investment Fund, and tax levies that are not decertified. The total street improvement project for 2020 is estimated at $3,443,188. Of this, $1,965,000 needs to be financed, with $739,877 assessed. Proceeding with this project would incur $1,965,000 of additional debt to pay for the improvements. This would increase the annual debt service by approximately $232,000, of which $92,000 would be covered by assessments, leaving a city obligation of approximately $140,000 to be funded with a tax levy or community investment fund revenues if available. The total City of Willmar outstanding indebtedness as of 12/31/2018, and I believe that, I don't know if that date is correct, was $124,007 million. During 2019, $4.7 million of new debt was issued, and $11.5 million debt was retired, leaving a balance of outstanding debt as of 12/31/19 of $117.9 million. Of that amount, $63.9 million is waste treatment debt being paid through the sewer rate revenue. $37.1 million is hospital debt being paid through a lease with Caris Health, and the remaining $17 million of improvement bonds is being paid through assessments in the Community Investment Fund that has a balance of 12/31/19 of $9.9 million. It was moved and seconded and passed to recommend a resolution for calling for a public hearing on June 1st on an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $1,965,000 general obligation improvement bond series 2020A. And I will enter that motion now and just ask for clarification on the date that I was questioning.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, if I could inject, that date is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Okens.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Fagerly, to call for a public hearing on June 1st for an ordinance authorizing issuance of general obligation improvement bond series 2020A. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman.
Aye. Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus?
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. The rest of the meeting was discussion items, and our meeting lasted about 2.5 hours, so please bear with me as I am going to read through these minutes. I do think they are important for both for us and for the community. City Hall Community Center project, $10.5 million. City Administrator Grammett provided an overview of the activity to date on the City Hall Community Center project that is budgeted for $10.5 million. Minimal work has been done by the architect and the construction manager to date due to COVID-19. It is anticipated that design work would occur during 2020 with plans and specifications done by January 2021, so bids could be obtained prior to the 2021 construction season. Moving into the new facility has been estimated for spring 2020. Financing the City Hall portion of the project, $8.5 million, has its funding source yet to be determined, but it is expected to be funded either by reserve funds plus a bond or else by just a bond. Bonding would be repaid by an annual property tax levy. If 100% is financed by the general obligation bond, the annual tax levy would increase by $810,000 or approximately 6 mils, which equates to 13.5% increase in the property tax levy for the additional debt service. Financing the community center portion, $2 million, would be funded by a general obligation revenue bond, which would be repaid by the 0.5% local option sales tax revenue. It is anticipated that community center would cost more than $2 million and that the proposed City Hall funding will be used to assist in financing the gap. It is not known for sure how the respective costs would be split between the City Hall portion versus the community center portion until the design and cost analysis has been completed. The ability to repay the debt will depend on the revenues received and the Invest in Willmar projects that are authorized by the City Council to proceed. The first concern is the city's ability to sell the bonds. After discussion with our bond consultants, it is expected that the city will sell the 2020 street project bonds privately through local lending institutions. Private placement of large amounts of bonds is unlikely. The total of the $10.5 million City Hall Community Center project, the $28 million Invest in Willmar project, and the $2.5 million street projects would be $41 million, which would be considered a large amount. The second concern, if we sell $41 million in bonds, is the ability to repay the bonds. The current sales tax revenue is unable to support $30 million in projects. At best, $10 million would be the maximum, with a conservative $5 to $7 million. So there is no chance for that property taxes let me read that again. With a conservative $5 to $7 million, so there is no chance that property taxes would be needed to be make up the difference with sales tax revenues are inadequate. The increase in taxes would be large if the city doesn't find ways to reduce the tax levy impact. Administrator Grammett noted that Mid-Minnesota has indicated that they will not be moving to the new community center City Hall, but that RAC 8 would move to the new location. Subsequently, the RAC 8 current location could either be leased out or sold, which could produce some revenue. Given that information, the question is what to consider with the design of the community center City Hall. The Invest in Willmar projects of $28 million. Staff reported that the Robbins Island $3 million project has completed the plans and specifications phase and is currently ready to bid out. The Swanson Field $2 million project could possibly be completed this fall. The event center is approximately 50% through the design phase. The other projects are at varying stages. given the revenues are substantially down from the projections, we would be unable to finance all of the $30 million projects in 13 years. Since it appears that there will not be enough revenue to cover the costs of all the projects, the council needs to prioritize. Sorry, I lost my place here, just a minute. Given the revenues are substantially down from the projections, we will be unlikely to finance all of the $30 million projects in 13 years. Since it appears that there will not be enough revenue to cover the costs of all the projects, the council needs to prioritize how to proceed with any or all of the projects. One option would be to request the legislature for an extension of the 13-year time period. Other options include delaying projects or readdressing the design makeup of projects. The council needs to discuss and come to a consensus on how to proceed. Councilmember Meskey felt that we already had prioritization in place via the committees that put the local option sales tax plan together. Administrator Gramitz explained that since the revenues are down substantially and that the city is incurring the debt, the council needs to direct the Invest in Willmar committees to revise their prioritizations. City Attorney Scott explained that the statute established restrictions on how these local option sales tax can be spent and that they can only be spent on projects approved by the voters. The statute does not compel the city to construct every project that was voted on. Administrator Gramitz recommended that the council consider prioritizing projects based on how each impacts operating budgets. Those having the least impact would not substantially cost the taxpayers additional ongoing operational costs, such as the Robbins Island and Swanson Field projects. Further, the stormwater project would probably remove some of the burden on taxpayers as it would reduce capital costs funded by the general tax levy. Conversely, the event center would increase operational costs, such as an additional maintenance staff, utilities, etc. Another consideration the council may use in prioritizing projects is determining what the citizens would deem important. Current soft cost obligations were reviewed also. Anticipated 2020 expenditures are expected to be $1.7 million. The breakdown of this amount includes soft costs of $1.8 million less the City Hall architectural fees of $562,500 plus stormwater hard costs of $302,500 plus $160,000 in construction management first stage fees. Discussion ensued about whether or not to proceed with these soft costs. Councilmember Osmus feels we shouldn't proceed with soft costs of projects we may not do. Councilmember Plowman is concerned about the uncertainty of the current economic conditions. Consequently, what they may decide now may be completely different in the future. Councilmember Muskie expressed concerns about whether to set a money limit first or priority limit first. City Attorney Scott stated that there is a deviation factor of 10% on each project. For any one project, you can take 10% of that and allocate it towards another project. Councilmember Osmus feels that the Robbins Island project should be done, but maybe hold off on some of the outbuildings. Further, we should move forward on preparing the design of each project so that we are ready to move when possible. Councilmember Alvarado also said we need to move forward with what we know now and what we should proceed with Robbins Island. Chair Nelson asked when the council needs to make a decision. Administrator Gramitz reported that the event center is about 50% through the design phase. Consequently, he reported that decisions should be pursued sooner rather than later on each project, as each project is currently at a different stage. Councilmember Davis reported that the event center's progress may be put on hold to revise plans, but that they may end up at a higher cost. Baker Tilly consultant Doug Green presented various scenarios that the council would have to consider the financing for the Invest in Willmar project. They could address specific projects, adjust the scope of projects, consider moving the year of construction, borrowing, addressing repayment period, and consider the sales tax revenue potential. Councilmember Schwantes asked if the council could receive the spreadsheets presented by Mr. Green. Information will be provided to the council. In summary, the council needs to come to a consensus on whether to delay projects, proceed at a lesser amount, etc., and to consider the implications of our tax levy, our overall debt amount, and the 2020 and 2021 operating budget. And that concluded the conversation regarding the Invest in Willmar project. We then talked about the 2020 operating budget. Finance Director Steve Okens reported that due to the COVID-19 epidemic, there are still many unknowns regarding funding from the federal and state levels. He reviewed the current council-approved budgeted revenues for 2020 and proceeded to present various scenarios projected due to the impacts of the COVID-19 epidemic emergency declarations. The best case scenario would be to move forward with the 2020 programs as budgeted with some possible delays and capital improvements. The moderate case scenario would be to identify targeted programs that for possible reduction and or delay once more information and funding possibilities are available from the federal and state governments. The worst case scenario would be possible reductions of revenue from $882,000 to $1.2 million. The City Council would reduce or appropriate any or all of the designated fund balance except the $3 billion of labor liabilities to address the three levels from the best to worst case scenarios. Any use of the remaining reserves could be used for the short term, until more information becomes available from the federal or state in the upcoming months. Of the 2020 budget, capital projects detailed under the moderate case scenario totaled $768,000. Administrator Grammett noted that Willmar has been financially conservative throughout the years and has enough reserves available to carry out 2020 as budgeted. However, questions remain unanswered as to whether or not we should begin making some adjustments already in 2020 in anticipation of a sizable decrease in 2021. Councilmember Meskey asked about the amount of actual savings realized so far to the hiring freeze, as well as how much would be projected if continued. Administrator Grammett reported that we have not hired part-time employees and that if we do not open the aquatic center, we would realize savings as well. Also, there are 2 to 3 full-time positions currently vacant. Total savings may be $300,000 for unfilled positions that include the finance director department position, a police department position, and 1 planning intern and part-time employees. We then had a discussion about the 2021 operating budget. The 2021 budget calendar was provided to the council members. Options for 2021, including reducing appropriations and using reserves. The charter allows up to 10% of the operating budget be designated as an emergency reserve. Further, as information is received regarding the status of the local government aid levies, etc., it will be forwarded to the council and used in preparation of the 2021 budget. That concluded our discussion on those items. The last thing we just talked about, future agendas. Future Finance Committee meetings will include the City Council information request submitted, Caris Health Rice Memorial communication, and Willmar Utilities 2019 audit. There was no other further business to come before the committee, and the meeting was adjourned at 7:25. And I will enter those minutes, a motion for those minutes to be approved now.
Osmus, second.
Motion by Nelson, seconded by Osmus. Discussion. Councilmember Osmus.
Okay, I can appreciate Councilperson Nelson. That was a lot of reading. But I just wanted to clarify a few points where some coulds and woulds got mixed up. And one of those was you said that RAC 8 would be moving to the new community center, and the verbiage was could. I don't want anybody to say that we are saying it is. We haven't made that decision yet. And then one of the other ones was on the 2020 operating budget. The verbiage was could reduce or appropriate any or all of the designated fund balances, and not that it would be. Just in case anybody didn't have the paperwork in front of them and that's what they heard, I just wanted to clarify that.
I apologize for those errors. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine.
Additional comments? Councilmember Swantis?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I think we need to approve the motion at hand. I didn't have any comments in regard to this item. I did originally, but Julie fixed it. So, yes, I wanted just to note that the minutes be approved as written, not as read.
Okay. Additional comments? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Bakerly.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Bowman.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
And the motion to file the minutes has been approved. Next, we have council member announcements. And let's start with Councilmember Alvarado. I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor.
Stop with Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I assumed we would have discussion based off of the conversation we had at the finance meeting in regard to what direction the council wanted to go. And I would be prepared to enter a motion that we approve the Robbins Island and the Swanson Field projects at 90% of the voter-approved project budget, and to allow the Invest in Willmar committee to use the remainder of the 2020 year to prioritize and plan for future projects.
Second.
It has been a motion and a second to, Councilmember Schwantes, do you have that? Okay. You may have to repeat that. I'm sorry, I didn't get that written down. Your motion is to approve.
Yes, correct. We'd received a letter from our Invest in Willmar chair. I think that Administrator Gromitz had sent it out to the full committee or to the full council. And so in honor of that email, my motion is to approve the Robbins Island and Swanson Field projects at 90% of the voter-approved project budget, and to allow the Invest in Willmar committee to use the remainder of 2020 to prioritize and plan for future projects.
Judy, do you have that? I hope. Okay. Discussion. Motion was made by Schwantes, seconded by Davis. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'm surprised it's not on the agenda. We had that discussion at the finance meeting about what we wanted to do. I was hoping that we would be prioritizing the project. I'm not against the Robbins Island project. The Invest in Willmar group meets on Wednesday. I'm finding this to be somewhat of a surprise to be added onto the agenda at this time. And so I think we need to be careful with the decisions that we made. And one of the things we said that night was, when do we need to make the decisions? So I just question whether we're ready for that at this point in time. And so I would hope that we would just respect the process and allow the Invest in Willmar group to meet on Wednesday too, and look at all the projects before we make a recommendation.
There's no discussion, Councilman Meske.
Similar but not the same. I guess we had thought we had talked about some options. Some of those were highlighted there. This eliminates two of those options and goes right to it. I guess I applaud the direct approach. I didn't know what the process. We left it probably ill prepared. We left it without a direction of how we were going to proceed. But we're sitting here now, and I guess I'm not prepared. I don't know what a 90%. I mean, we were talking about maybe all the programs having to do a 2/3 cut. We talked about reprioritizing, and now we have one set at a higher threshold moving forward. So, again, I appreciate moving something, but I didn't know what the process was going to be.
Additional comments? Councilman Swantis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought the intent of the entire conversation that we had last week was so that we could move forward on these projects. We have heard from the Invest in Willmar chair that he wished that we would move forward and take action tonight. So I'm actually kind of surprised that was no one else's understanding. The 90% I took is there was conversation. If you recall, that 90% of the project needs to go, if we do, we cannot take, say, 60% of a project and give 40% of that project to another project, right? So we have 90% that was a deviation factor. I think that's a word that was used in the minutes. So that's why I use that 90%. So we could go ahead and do those projects. There are a lot of things left unanswered for us to be able to prioritize projects across the board. I think that is appropriate to let the Invest in Willmar committee have that conversation and prioritize those for us. The whole purpose and intent of the Invest in Willmar committee was to do that. I heard comments last Thursday night of people concerned that we were taking that power away from them. At least that was my understanding of some of the comments. And so what this does is it honors the work that the Invest in Willmar committee has done, and it allows them to move forward. And it allows us to take these projects, get bids while the bidding is still available for us to obtain the bids and do the work yet this summer. If we wait too much longer, that is not going to be, that won't be able to happen yet this year. So I think before we start cutting projects and shorting them and not building them to the capacity we would otherwise, we really need to take a look at what is available by going to the state legislature and being able to extend the period of time that we can collect these funds. I mean, we have a lot of options that we haven't yet explored. So this allows us to move forward on something, not be disrespectful of where we find ourselves in this current economy, but also respecting the work of the Invest in Willmar committee.
Mayor Calvin, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Councilmember Nelson, followed by Meske.
Thank you. I'm kind of at a loss for words because I think we asked multiple times. The silence was deafening by the council members last Thursday in not being ready to prioritize and not bringing anything forward. And that includes the people that made the motion. We got an email from the chair of the Local Option Sales Tax Committee. We did not hear from the Local Option Sales Tax Committee. They are meeting on Wednesday. And I feel like this is an end run on something that should be very positive, and it's really frustrating that we as a council can't sit down together to prioritize these things. I think there are mixed feelings amongst us, and just to review the project and to review the financing. And so it is frustrating that we are trying to just do this without looking at the whole picture. And so I apologize, but we spent 2.5 hours together last Thursday, and no one spoke up. No one spoke up to say what the next step should be. And what was said is that we need to do this as a prioritization. And so I would like us to respect that. And I would ask you to withdraw your motion so that we can do this in a right, timely manner with all of the local option sales tax committee, not just one person.
I'm not going to allow council members to tell other council members to withdraw their motions. That's out of order. Councilmember Meskey.
You're on mute, Sean.
Thank you, Kathy. I won't describe this as an end run. I think it's one of those things where we did have a lot of ideas, and this is somebody who was forwarding one of those ideas. I'm a little ill prepared for that. I am on that steering committee that's meeting on Wednesday. I do know what the chair sent out, and it's not that I necessarily disagree with the chair, but because we do have the committee and we were going to use those folks as the sounding board, I did anticipate we were going to have them at least meet and see how that would go first. And so on that regard, I would agree with Council Member Nelson's opinion there, but I wouldn't call it an end run. I think we're anxious to get something happening. This is an attempt to do that, but it was maybe not necessarily would have been my choice if for what's sitting there, because we haven't properly vetted, in my opinion, moving something to a 2/3 level, or moving this project forward, or spending it all on planning, which I think were the three kind of pieces that were out there. So right now, I would probably support this at the next council meeting, but right now I would probably steer away from it just because I want that steering committee to chime in first.
Councilmember Osmus.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious if there is any need for expediency on the Robbins Island or the Swanson Field that can't wait until the next city council meeting, and again after the Invest in Willmar group can meet. Is there any reason why we would need to vote on that tonight, or could we wait until after they meet?
Councilmember Osmus, at our last meeting, we gave approval for plans and specs and bidding for Robbins Island, and that was held because we were going to have the finance full council meeting, and there was no decision that came out of that. I know that there is some urgency on behalf of the staff to get the bid on the floor, but after the discussion that took place at the finance committee meeting, I think there was additional reluctance to move that forward. So, time is of the essence, of course, because you don't have Legion Ball this year, so you could get Swanson Field going. I guess Robbins Island speaks for itself on the importance of that. I've talked to Matt Dawson, I don't know how many times since our meeting, and I'll just leave it there. I'm not going to speak for Matt. City Administrator Grammons.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm actually going to take a different perspective than the mayor did, and I would put this on the table for consideration. We have plans and specifications for Robbins Island, and 2 weeks isn't going to make or break that project. Starting 2 weeks now, earlier or later, not a big deal. We're not ready for Swanson, so 2 weeks is not going to make or break that project. What I will put on the table for your consideration, though, is the event center is racking up $15,000 a week in architectural fees that I believe we need to take the position of telling the other architectural firms and construction managers, put everything on hold because we need to reassess what we're doing. That is where the cash flow is right at this point, is at the architect level. If we're going to reassess in 2020 what we're going to do, they'll have the project already completed. So we need to tell them to stop. So I'm just going to flip that out there, is that what I would like to see put on hold for the council to give the staff the direction is to basically say, put the architects on hold for right now, all of them. Just stop what you're doing. We need to reassess if we're doing 90%, 60%, or 75% of the plan. Because if we let them get too far, then we're going to have to pay to have them cut it all up and put it back together again. So I'm just basically doing the opposite of the mayor. That I'm putting myself at great peril here. I know I am. But that is how I see it. The projects can be delayed, no big rush. 2 weeks, not a big deal. What is a big deal is the design of the other projects that are currently going on. Now, City Hall hasn't been doing much because I've had that conversation with them, and the architect understands where we are. But the event center and the rec fields are going basically full speed ahead, even though they're kind of talking about doing some joint things. They're moving forward. So that's how I see the projects. So I'll end it with that.
I'll just say that I've talked with Donick Brothers, and we had very, very favorable bids on our street projects, and it's very time sensitive. And I personally feel 2 weeks will make a difference on the bids from what I've been told by the contractors. Of course, the contractors want the work. Councilmember Paulman, followed by Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If this was the culmination of many discussions, then I would be prepared to move. But I think we owe it to. I mean, the fact that we have a Invest in Willmar committee and board that has been planning on meeting. I believe we owe it to ourselves, to them, and ultimately to the taxpayers to hear from that board. And then further beyond that, I tend to agree with Administrator Gromits in that the price to pay for being wrong one direction, scheduling, is lesser than the price to pay being wrong on the other end financially. So if we're going to err on one side or the other, I would rather err on the side of fiscal conservancy right now, because we can always throttle back up. But if we outspend or overspend ourselves right now, that's not a good look. And I personally wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with the taxpayers' money. Could the outcome be the same following, if we hear from the Invest in Willmar committee and they have a nicely outlined plan that they've come to consensus with and about, and then they relay that to staff and put together a nice package, I'm certainly willing to entertain that. But I think we should at least wait and hear from them. That's my own personal opinion. And then get on with it. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, we had, as Councilmember Nelson said, we had 2.5 hours of discussion, and we did. And so I came prepared tonight, assuming that we had that conversation and people should be ready to move. I'm putting forward a motion so that we can have a place to start the conversation. But I want to read to you what we all received in the email tonight, just so the public even understands that what Chair Matt Dawson wrote is as the chair of the Invest in Willmar, I would really like to see the project at Robbins Island move forward for bidding at the City Council meeting on Monday. He's asking us to please do this. That is my hope. It is why we moved and approved this at Invest in Willmar Park and Rec, as long as you, Steve, and the council is comfortable with funding. There's no reason to slow this down unless there is a safety or financial situation. So when I read that email today, I understand that as that is the Invest in Willmar's desire for us to move forward. This at least gives us some place to start and give credit to the 2.5 hours of conversation that we did have.
Councilmember Osmus.
Okay, I'm going back to the conversation that we did have at the finance meeting, and I'm just going to repeat what I said there. I also think we should go ahead with the Robbins Island. We have to do that. But the problem I had with the motion was at the 90% level. And I totally understand where you were coming from with the instruction about that only 10% could get moved to another project. But I still think we could do the pavement thing, and even if it does, as the mayor stated, it may make a difference in 2 weeks for Dunix to get that bid in. I still think that we hold off on the outbuildings or on the two buildings, and I don't know that we're totally ready to go with Swanson. But I would like to see us vote to move ahead on the roads at Robbins Island tonight. And I don't see that as circumventing Invest in Willmar in any way, because I think they have a lot to discuss. They knew that that was put out to be approved, but that piece I feel we can move forward with, and the rest can be discussed further.
I'll just point out that the shelters are being bid as alternates, and so you would have one more swing at those two because they would not be approved without the council's authority because they're being bid as alternates. So, Councilmember Meske.
All right, that fatigue is setting down. Keep push that mic button. Sorry. I would agree with everything that Councilor Osmus just said, because when you read the letter, we have a financial situation. That was the discussion, and that's what the difficulty is. However, I would say the credence to doing just the roads, which is not the 90%, but by doing just the roads, we addressed that as a council and said that is part of the plan that we could approve, and those other words were contingencies, and we were in the same financial situation when we did it. So that I would concur is something we could do. I mean, I heard, and this is echoing in my head when Councilmember Nelson read the minutes that Willmar, because they were conservative through the years, are in this great financial position. I don't understand why we would forgo that conservative idea when we're in the middle of an unpredictable pandemic. And so I would say we have the dollars to do the roads. We as a council have approved the roads. I would be okay with something like that, but setting it at 90% when we're sitting there with a bunch of unknown financials, and that is where I think, I know where the chair feels. I know where the lost chair is falling on this, and it's not that I wouldn't disagree with it, but where we are financially, a little pullback would make some more sense. I like the idea of inching into it instead of jumping in head first. But again, I know we have to start somewhere. I appreciate that. It's more conversation I thought we were going to have tonight, but that's part of being on the city council. So thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. I had a conversation with Mr. Dawson today at his request, and I thanked him for his email, and we had a very good discussion about the need to move forward and the projects, etc. We also talked about the prioritization. but we also talked about being prepared financially and the things that needed to come together. And I don't think what we're bringing forward tonight really represents a conclusive way to move forward with the project. I think we do have to make decisions if it's 90% or if it includes the shelters, or are we financing the full amount? And to move forward with a motion that doesn't have the financial conditions attached to it, is it going to include Swanson Field? I will go back to what Administrator Grammett said, and I think we can wait the 2 weeks. Let's put this together positively so that it's a good thing for Robbins Island, a good thing for the city of Willmar, and a good way to finance it. I don't think waiting 2 weeks, and I think the bid process needs to be respected also. I appreciate that there are businesses out there hungry for that, and I think we owe a responsibility to do that correctly. And I would defer back to Mr. Grammett and say, I think we can wait 2 weeks and to do this right. And I do think that the local option sales tax group will work together to do that. And I believe Matt feels that way too. His email very much is telling us to do it. I don't think that the intention here is not to do it. I just think we got to do the steps right and to have the financing ready to go when we do it.
Councilmember Alvarado.
What I recall from that meeting was I was pretty gun-ho on wanting to move on Robbins Island, and I still am. I believe it's a project that's been planned. We've had a great committee that put a lot of time to move it forward. But what I recall when I mentioned, yeah, let's go for it, I was reined in, and by that I mean I think we have to respect our Invest in Willmar committee, let them vent it out, let them prioritize it. This is going to probably be on top. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. But we have them there for a purpose. They've moved this thing this far, so I think we have to give them the opportunity to put the task at hand that we want them to prioritize, and we want them to make recommendations. And I think that's kind of what I think we should wait for. But yes, I want Robbins Island as much as the next guy, and I think it'll be good for Willmar. And I agree with Administrator Grammett. So if we wait 2 weeks, it's not going to be that bad in the planning process. Thank you.
I'll just remind the group, and I'm sure you all remember, the same 3 people that are telling us to wait are the same 3 people that told us to wait 2 weeks ago or on Thursday. And so it reminds me of a curling center that we were trying to get done. And we waited 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 and we waited. And so, I mean, if that's the goal here, is to just wait and wait and wait, I guess that's the council's decision. We can do that. Mr. Grammett.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I think on the statement that I made is are Swanson and Robbins Island critical timing wise? And I think the answer to me as an administrator is you could probably wait 2 weeks. But on the other hand, I really don't have any problem with going out to bid on Robbins Island because of the alternates. You have, as the mayor stated before, you have final decision on what the project is. If you're thinking that you're only going to do 2/3 of it, well, 2/3 of it is what the road project is. If you make that decision, a week or 2 from now or 3 weeks after the bids are in, you can knock off the shelters. They're alternates. And you're back to, a lesser amount than 90%. But I have no problem with going out for bids in a month from now, looking at the bids and, deciding what to do. Invest in Willmar would have met. The council would have met one more time to discuss, these issues in more detail. Finance might have met. So I personally, as an administrator, don't have any issues with going out because we've got the protections built into the plans and specs. We can cut when the bids come in. No, we're not going to spend that much. Out goes one shelter. We're not going to spend as much again. Out goes two shelters. You have that final say. So are they time sensitive? The mayor and I can, disagree. Yes, they are. No, they're not. But what I would recommend, I guess, is nothing stops you from going out and getting the bids. That still gives you enough time to work through all these issues. I was just going on record as saying, is it life or death? Probably not. Would I recommend it? I think I would, because you still have all this time to work out the details. And that gets back to whether you fund them at 90% or 70% or 60% or whatever it is. So from my position, I'm okay with going out for Swanson, not Swanson, for Robbins Island, because we have plans and specs. We don't have plans and specs for Swanson, and the Invest in Willmar committee needs to tell the subcommittee that you need to build the plans and specs for Swanson in phases so you have alternates. The event center needs to build it in phases so you have alternates, so that when you finally make a decision, you can say, well, we're going to fund it to the 65% level, and the rest above that does not get built. And so that's the direction that I think I would see the city going in. Move on, because you still have an opportunity to deal with Robbins Island. Tell the subcommittees and the Invest in Willmar what your expectations are for the architects, so we can rein them in without building their whole project in one big bite. We need to tell them, you need to build in alternates and you need to prioritize. That's the message that Invest in Willmar should get on Wednesday. So that's what I'm looking to come from the council. What do you want them to know? Is telling the architects to set this, have the committee set it up in priorities, and then have the architect design it so you can, add the projects you want and then cut it off. I think that's the goal that I was hoping to achieve. Tonight, let's move on, but the committees need to be told something for direction. And I think I said that last time at the finance meeting, and I'm going to say it again. We need direction from the city council. And in order for the committees to move forward, they need to have a target, and they need that guidance from the city council. So that's what I'm hoping to get tonight. I'm done.
Councilmember Davis.
Okay, from my perspective, when we met Thursday and talked for 2.5 hours, I thought we were going to come back here tonight and make some decisions, which is what we're doing. And I agree with Mr. Gromit that, we can bid out the whole thing and then pick the chunks that work right now. So it can go to the event center group, or not the event center, sorry, I'm on that one, on the local option sales tax group on Wednesday, and they can take it from there and decide what parts they like.
Councilmember Maskey, followed by Osmus.
Well, I would say there are so many unknowns. Obviously, budgets are not where they need to be. And the last time we talked about it is we talked about having to perhaps cut 2/3 or a third, out of the budgets. And so that's the one thing that's known is we do have a plan for Robbins Island. That's why I like what Councilmember Osmond said. And I would offer, instead of that 90, if you want to set a bar that says we're going to have to set these levels, prioritize. Robbins Island is already prioritized as well. I mean, those things are listed as contingencies. So I would offer a friendly amendment of moving that 90 figure to 67%. And that should cover the roads, and the other ones are sitting as contingencies. That sends a clear message to all of the local option sales taxes that you're going to have to prioritize, and we're going to fund at least 2/3 of that. That's the money we have. I think funding that much higher is not wise, in my opinion. I'm a very fiscal conservative as well. So I guess I would offer a friendly amendment that you set that at 67%. And help me if that's not going to cover the roads, but I think that's the number that was there.
Okay, I'll follow up on that. And I don't know that it would be with the friendly amendment because you also have the Swanson Field tacked on with that motion. My feeling is right now, if it's the desire of whatever the council is going to do, but okay, I'm thinking I would vote down the present motion and come back with a motion to just fund the road through Robbins Island. I don't know that we have to say a 90% or 67% fund the road. And I still think that's being fiscally responsible with what we have and what's going on right now with the funds we have coming in. And we're at least moving forward with something and we're making a decision tonight. And that is still, I still don't feel like that's end-arounding the Invest in Willmar group. They're still going to meet. And we just need to get the bids out. And if we don't have any reason to wait for 2 weeks, why should we? And if we can save a couple of $1,000, then we should act on it tonight.
So Councilmember Meske offered a friendly amendment to the motion, or this, you're withdrawing that, Councilmember Meske? Okay. Councilmember Swantis.
Mr. Mayor, I would say change it at 90% to up to 90%. It would still allow us to do the bidding, see where they come in, and pick and choose as if we need to do, if we would do the alternate or not, but it wouldn't limit us to what we can do at Swanson Field. I do want to come back to this email from Matt or Mr. Dawson and note again that he also did address Swanson Field. And he said he'd like to see Swanson Field take the steps and move forward to the bidding and the completion this summer. So I ask, what information are we going to get between now and in 2 weeks that is going to change our mind in what our priorities are? What's going to change? You know, we've got contractors who want to know what it is they should be doing. The other thing I would note is the reason that my motion did not include anything in regard to architectural plans is because I think they should stop. So if they're wondering what the direction is, the conversation that I heard Thursday night was that we do not want a collection of plans that sit on the shelf, and by the time we go to do the project, they're dusty, they're old, and we're now going to have to spend additional dollars to have them updated. That is not a good use of funds to say, let's go ahead and spend our money today and just have all of the plans, all of the architectural work done ahead of time. To me, that is not a good use of funds, and I thought I heard that from others as well. Let's do the architectural plans as we see fit for the project to take place, and as that has become a priority and identified through the Invest in Willmar program. So really, I thought I was giving direction, and again, a place to start the conversation.
Councilmember Swantis, are you changing your motion? Because that would have to be approved by your seconder.
To read up to 90%.
Okay, is the seconder okay with that?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Plowman, followed by Councilmember Osmus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think kind of the main thing that could change in between now and then is hearing a formalized statement from the board, as opposed to an email from the individual. With all due respect to Mr. Dawson, and I genuinely mean this, Mr. Dawson, I believe he's done a ton of work, and I greatly respect everything that he's done and whatnot. But in this case, I think hearing an official statement from the board, that ranks a little bit higher than an email to me. And then secondly, within his email, first of all, it's a request. It's a request from a personal email as opposed to a decision made by a board. Secondarily, within there, it says the Swanson Field, and I'll yield that we had talked about Robbins Island, and I'm prepared to move on Robbins Island, as I believe others are as well. But with regard to Swanson Fields, within that email, it says, unless there's other issues, and one of the issues in there primarily being financial. And that is the reason we're having these discussions, is because of financial considerations. And I just can't in good conscience make a decision like this. And duly noted, we need to give the board direction. That I fully admit that. And if we're not given enough direction, we need to give more, and we need to be clear about that. I understand. But I think it's very important to hear from the board as opposed to an individual, even if that individual happens to be the chair. I think getting that board feedback is pretty important. Thanks.
Member Hassel, followed by Nelson.
Okay, I'm not comfortable moving ahead with Swanson Field because they still have, I feel, the same objective as the other projects to go back to look at 2/3 of what they can do and have their alternatives. But I'm fully ready to go ahead with the road on Robbins Island tonight. So that's either I think we need to call a vote on the motion and go.
Are you calling the question?
I'm going to let Councilmember Nelson speak.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. I simply wanted the motion to be read. What is all in the motion?
City Clerk Thompson, please read the motion.
The motion, as I have it, I was writing rather quickly, was to approve the Robbins Island Swanson Field projects, and this is the original motion, at 90% and allow Invest in Willmar to use the remainder of 2020 to prioritize. And then
it was amended.
And then Schwantes amended it to add up to 90%.
Additional conversations. Okay. I'm sorry, Councilmember Alvarado.
So what I'm hearing is that if the Swanson Field piece was to be removed from that motion, the probability of the Robbins Island portion moving forward would be pretty unanimous. Is that what I'm hearing? That's what I'm gathering from my listening.
Councilmember Alvarado, that's why you take a vote. I mean, you can't do a straw poll of the council. Well, I guess you can. Just like you can tell people to withdraw motions. So, is that what you want to do?
I'm not telling. I'm trying to. I would like to make a friendly amendment to remove the Swanson Field piece out of the motion.
Is there a second to the motion or to the amendment? I'm sorry. You said a friendly amendment. Councilmember Davis and Schwantes, do you accept that friendly amendment?
I'm going to ask the motion to stand.
Motion stands.
I'll move to call the question. Move to call the question.
Second. Motion's been made to call the question. It's been made and seconded. Roll call to call the question.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Nay.
Osmus.
And this is the vote on to call the question or the whole motion?
Call the question.
Aye to call the question.
Bauman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 1 nay.
The motion to call the question stands. Roll call.
Councilmember Miskey,
No.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
No.
Osmus,
No.
Bauman,
No.
Nelson,
No.
Fagerly.
Aye.
3 ayes, 5 nays.
That motion carries.
No.
I'm sorry, the motion fails. Next on the agenda is Councilmember Osmus.
Now, I appreciate that Councilmember Schwantes came forward with some action for this evening. And so because of the email that we did receive for some forward movement. So if she wants to, I would like to make the motion to just go forward with the Robbins Island pavement project.
Motion is made by Osmus, seconded by Schwantes, to move forward with the Robbins Island pavement. So does that include the parking lots and everything, or just the roadway, or all pavement?
All pavement.
Okay.
The project.
Mr. Gramis, you know what we're talking about there? You understand that?
Yes. What it basically would be we would just remove the alternates from the bidding documents and just do the pavement.
Yeah. Okay. Is that your understanding? Motion on second?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion.
And I was going to suggest that Schwantes could make that motion, but I can't do that because
Please don't. Council members speak for themselves. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I'm ready to move forward with Robbins Island. I'm still at a loss with why we are not waiting to see. Maybe we should be doing both, and the other projects. Now we're doing just kind of a question on the one piece of it. So I think we're doing I'm just confused with why we would just pick this with when we might want to do the $5 million in bonding. We've looked at those numbers. We've talked about being able to do those numbers. Can we do them? So I'm still confused with why we're trying to just do this.
Councilmember Miskey.
Well, I think the difference here is this was one where the priorities have already been outlined by the committee that put this together. And this is also one where we have the dollars to do this project piece that we're talking about. So I guess that, for me, is the difference between the two. This feels much more comfortable because this is one of those things that I think has been vetted. And like I said, the council even approved this with those numbers the way they were. So we truly have to do a much bigger job of vetting the other projects, but this one I think is different because we've actually approved this project and they were prioritized. And again, we have this ability to add back if all of a sudden the financial situation changes, we can add back those alternates at a later date. So I think this one is different.
Additional discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
So I just want to clarify, we don't have the money. We're going to have to bond for this, whether it is $2 million or $3 million or $5 million. We don't have the cash to do this, is my understanding. And so while we are anxious to do one piece of it, we're still going to have to bond. And so we can put the bids out there to do, but what are we going to do with the rest of it? And so just a question with why we can't just wait to see, are we going to do anything else? So that when we bond, we have the right amount and do the right with that. So we don't have cash to pay for this. And so we're going to have to bond. So I'm still confused with, I know we're anxious to do this, and I can appreciate that. But we still have to bond. So I'm confused with why we would just not wait to see what we want to bond.
Councilmember Osmus.
I think we were pretty clear that we were going to be very comfortable bonding for $5 million. That we had that in even the lowest projection of what might come in from the local option sales tax every month. We didn't specifically say that that was going to be the amount, but we knew $5 million was very doable, and that was going to include the Robbins Island pavement. So that's why I'm very comfortable going ahead right now with Robbins Island, moving forward, and the rest of the projects still have to do some more due diligence of how they're going to cut back and what their alternates are going to be. But this one is ready to go, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't move forward on it this evening.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I would just ask for clarification though. When you bond, you have to list the projects of what you're going to spend the money on. So if all we're bidding is Robbins Island and we get the bid for just that project, then I'm going to ask Mr. Gramitz or Mr. Okens to help me out here with, if we go out and go to bids and we approve the bid, then where's the money going to come from, and how do we do the bonding if we're not ready to do Swanson Field?
Additional questions from council? Councilmember Miskey. Oh, I seen you right on. Okay, the question is to do the pavement for Robbins Island. Additional discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. Mr. Gramitz, are you wanting direction from the council to stop all other projects at this point? Because I heard you say that a couple times.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I think the answer to that is yes, until, the committees are told that they can only spend 67%. The committees and the architects are going to continue to spend 100%. So direction needs to come from the council down through the committee to their architects, actually through me more than likely, but alerting them to the fact that we're going to set up the plans and specs in alternates so that if we need to cut at 65, 67%, we do that. And that's what I think needs to come from the council downward so that everybody else can make the appropriate plans. And if that's what you want to do, I mean, that's perfectly fine. But if you don't do that, the committee is going to say, well, how much money are we going to get? How much do we need to plan for? What should be our cutoff for when the alternates start? Or we just prioritize, and when you finally decide how much you can spend as a city, it just cuts off. But then you run into the problem, to be quite honest, of first project to the table, much like Robbins Island, first project could have gotten all their money. Now, as a council, you decided not to do that, which is perfectly fine. But unless you tell everybody you're in the same boat, so plan on it, you could run into issues. So that's the direction I think that needs to come from the council down to the Invest in Willmar, which then will trickle down, and everybody at least knows what their target is now. And if everybody remembers, the 2/3 amount comes from the anticipated amount of sales tax revenue coming in, funded about $20 million worth of projects, and we all know we have $30 million worth of projects. So that's where that number comes from. It does not take into account inflation, but it doesn't take into account a lot of unknowns at this point in time too. So it's our best conservative estimate. So if that's what's being sent down, that's a good direction for them to shoot for. So yes, that's what I was looking for.
Councilor Miskey.
I would move to suspend all architectural designs for local option sales projects until revised priorities and funding guidelines are established.
Second.
I missed who seconded. Raise your hand, please. Motion by Miskey, seconded by Swantis. Additional discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Swantis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes. City Administrator Gramitz.
I don't remember this. It could have happened, but we did have in finance a resolution introducing the ordinance authorizing general improvement bonds. Did I miss that? Or was there a motion on that? There was?
I thought we did it.
We approved it. We approved it, but I don't remember the resolution.
I thought we did it. Does
Okay,
anybody else?
I apologize.
We did it, so. Mr. Scott?
This is by no means an official record, but I have written down the motion as it was read, but I don't have a vote recorded, so I don't know if we got to the point of voting.
Ms. Thompson, our city clerk, can you help us with this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there was a motion and a second on that, and we did do a roll call, and it passed 8-0.
My mistake.
I thought we had, but hey, with all this paper I had moving around tonight, it certainly could have got past me. Additional discussion. Mr. Gramitz.
We talked about the current street project funding. We talked about the Invest in Willmar funding. We sort of have a plan in place that we talked about at finance for 2020 and also 2021. But other than just, having that discussion about City Hall Community Center, I guess I'm looking for direction on that particular topic.
Well,
because I've got an architect sitting out there wondering where we're going with that also.
The motion was to suspend all local option sales tax. That would include the community center, but you're right, we did not address the City Hall project. So
I would make a motion that we suspend the architectural portion of the project until further notice.
for what project?
Still priorities have been set.
For what project?
Until priorities have been set. That was for the City Hall.
City Hall project, yeah.
The second to that?
Second.
Motion by Swanton, seconded by Meskey, I believe.
Yeah.
Discussion. Meskey. I'm sorry, Councilman Meskey.
I would just say maybe instead of until further notice, it might be cleaner just to say until funding guidelines are established, because I think that's the thing that's holding that project. I'd offer that up as a friendly amendment to the maker of the motion.
Sure. Thank you.
I'll as a seconder, I'm good.
Ms. Thompson, you got that? I see you writing free virtually over there. You got it? Just no discussion. My eyes are getting tired and I'm trying to catch all the blocks here, so. Councilmember Nelson, do you have your hand up?
No.
Roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
Fontes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
Mr. Gramitz, additional direction you're seeking this evening?
None at this time, sir.
Okay, I'm to City Council member announcement. I'm starting with Councilmember Osmus.
I don't have anything. Just these are hard times, good conversations, you guys. Good discussions.
And I believe Plowman sits next to you, so Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to hear with the new executive order from Governor Walz that things are starting to open up, obviously with certain restrictions, safety guidelines, whatnot, but I would just encourage anybody and everybody to, as these places are able to open, patronize those places that are local and that have not been able to do business as normal. If you want to see them stick around in the near future and the long future, we need to bring them our business, and we need to continue to support our local businesses and our local economy. That will help us get through this together. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
I don't think I have any comments other than just to tell everybody to be safe and to be careful.
Councilmember Fagerly.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Miskey.
I'll just echo Councilmember Plowman's comments. Small businesses need us now more than ever. Please buy local whenever you can. A lot of them will deliver. They've got curbside. It's actually, there's no end to the ingenuity that people have in how they're delivering their products. So please patronize all of our Willmar establishments. They need you.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Have a good night.
Councilmember Davis.
Since we are talking about what a great job the Park and Rec Board is doing, I just want to bring up 100 miles in 100 days with Mayor Marv. So I'm going to try to do it. We'll see if I do.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I enjoy working with this group, and I want to express that appreciation. We don't always see eye to eye, but it's still fun. By the time we meet again, I believe the Willmar High School seniors will have graduated. They have a different year than we had. And I just want to recognize them that they have an opportunity like no other. They're the first class in how many years to ever not finish their senior year. And they have an opportunity to make fresh tracks where we follow tracks. So they have an opportunity that I think they should embrace and show us what they can do, because they've got access to the greatest information. They are quicker than we are. They're smarter than we are. They're very creative. So I want to wish the class of 2020 at Ridgedale and Willmar High School congratulations. I also want to say, if you're hurting for food, we got the Willmar Food Shelf. Their phone number is 320-235-2641. I'll repeat that, 320-235-2641. Find out when they're open. and their second harvest, and they're 800-365-0270, 800-365-0270. And Julie reminded me to mention last year, mow in, don't mow in the street. We have pollution guidelines we're trying to achieve. So thank you for your time, and again, thank you for allowing me to work with you guys. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next, we have community announcements, Public Works, Public Safety. Councilmember Plowman.
Yep, we are going to meet this week. Public Works, Public Safety will be meeting Wednesday, the 20th, 5 p.m. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson, Finance.
Finance is meeting Thursday at 5.
Community Development, Councilmember Fairley.
We're going to meet Tuesday, the 26th, because it's Memorial Day on Monday. We're going to be talking about relaxing some ordinances for bars and restaurants for outdoor seating. So try to help the businesses out.
Labor, Councilmember Meske.
Said it earlier, but I'll say it again. After that meeting, we will be meeting Tuesday, May 26, 6:15, all council meeting to talk about negotiations.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that we have 4 open city council seats, and filings open tomorrow morning, I believe, if I have my dates right, Ms. Thompson, and I believe they're open for 2 weeks. So I think they close at 5 o'clock on the 2nd, is that correct? So they open tomorrow morning, is it at 8 or 9?
Mr. Mayor, that would be 8 o'clock tomorrow.
We open at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and the filings are open through June 2nd at 5 p.m. I have nothing other than that, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Meske, seconded by Swantis. We're adjourned.